Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our fiction interview. We're going to be speaking tonight with the author and translator of one of our pieces, Mayo. My name is Melissa Richer, and I'm one of the prose editors at Sand Journal.
And I'm Ashley Moore. I'm a prose editor with Melissa.
So we're here with Karla Marrufo and Allison deFreese to talk about Karla's award-winning Spanish language novel, Mayo, and Allison's English language translation, an excerpt of which is featured in Sand's new issue, number 21. So welcome to you both, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So let's begin with some introductions. Karla Marrufo is a novelist, poet, and playwright whose work has won several prestigious Latin American literary awards, among them the 2005 to 2007 National Wilberto Canton Award in Playwriting for her play Lluvia para siete insomnes, Rain for Seven Insomniacs. She's also won the Jose Diaz Bolio Poetry Prize for La Ciudad en Ti, The City Within You, and finally, the 2014 National Dolores Castro Award in Narration for this novel, Mayo, the month of May.
Allison deFreese is a translator whose writing and literary translations have appeared in 60 magazines and journals, including Asymptote, Solstice, the New York Quarterly, Quick Fiction, and Southwestern American Literature. An English translation of Maria Negroni's book, Elegy for Joseph Cornell, is forthcoming this year from Dalkey Archive Press, along with 3 other book-length translations this year.
And before we get to the reading, we'd like to introduce you to Mayo. The setting is a decaying house surrounded by the lush foliage of the Yucatán Peninsula's hottest and most humid month. The novel explores isolation, loneliness, memory loss, and the way our personal stories and family narratives evolve over time. In chapter 1, which we'll discuss today, an older narrator, aware that she is losing her memory, lives alone with her cat Tiresias in a house that was formerly a law office. Outside, the flame trees are in bloom, and inside, water from condensation slowly drips down the walls. The narrator recounts stories of life and death spanning 3 generations of a family's experience in a small town in the Yucatan. Mirroring the condensation on the walls, the narrator's drip of memory drifts through what has been forgotten and is later remembered in new ways. And now we'll hear Karla read from chapter 1 in the original Spanish.
Gracias. ¿Sabías que hay una palabra portuguesa muy parecida a tu nombre? La olvidé, pero significa recuerdo o recuerdos, como enviarle saludos a alguien. Si pudiera acariciar al gato, la recordaría, así como recordaría sacar la basura cada viernes y cerrar la puerta del refrigerador, la puerta de mis lágrimas y todas las ventanas al salir de casa. Hay tanto silencio. Cuando tú callas, la casa se ensucia más rápido. ¿Lo has notado? Eres un polvo obstinado traspasando ventanales para acomodarse en los rincones guardados bajo llave. Quizá por eso Lola no soporta este lugar. Aún conserva la calidez hipócrita de un despacho jurídico. Y yo le doy la razón. Si seguimos así, podríamos rentarla para servicios funerarios. Es un negocio fructífero. La gente nunca dejará de morirse, de callar, de ser viernes. Ven, toca la pared. Está llena de burbujas oscuras. Hay tanta humedad. La madera se infla. Yo me he inflado. Hay días en que me siento rodar, flotar, rodar. Como en aquel parque donde girábamos cuesta abajo muchas veces hasta cansarnos, hasta llegar al pie del cerro donde el pasto crecía verde y mesurado. ¿Te acuerdas? ¿Cuántos fines de semana? Llegábamos y había una algarabía infantil diciendo que todo iba a estar bien. Y comíamos sándwiches, y tomábamos jugos de frutas, y los payasos inflaban globos en forma de perros. Los perros pasaban con sus formas de globos para luego explotar al pie de las carreteras. En ese entonces, las burbujas eran claras y todo estaba bien. Deberíamos volver a esa ciudad y alejarnos un rato de esta tierra tan plana. ¿Ya viste cómo me mira Tiresias? Siempre me ha intrigado saber qué piensa cuando sus ojitos verdes se hacen inmensos al apuntar hacia los míos. Me recuerda aquella película, ¿cómo se llamaba? Donde se preguntaban si en vez de estar humanizando a nuestros animales, no serían ellos que nos están animalizando a nosotros. Luego a Lola se le ocurre traer de vuelta esa canción, la del maestro que enseñaba a escribir a unos cachorros. Era zoofílico. ¡Qué canción tan tonta! A mí me hace reír con una ilusión pasajera y recordar los animales, las burbujas que andan por la vida con la memoria descompuesta. No ha pasado mucho tiempo y sin embargo las cosas se me van borrando y se mezclan. A veces tengo la impresión de que el pasado es una casa descolorida frente al mar, condenada a la caricia hostil y cotidiana de la arena, de la sal arrastrada por el viento. Lola insiste en las vitaminas, los jugos de pescado, las cápsulas de algas. Dice que debo dormir, con sueños tranquilos, sin agujas en las sienes, 8 horas, 10 horas, 1000 horas, dormir para siempre. Pero hay un sol maligno dentro de mis sueños dibujándome hoyos negros, despertares agitados cada 40 minutos. Lo vi en la tele. La chica rubia de boca pequeña lo decía, una mancha oscurísima en el centro del fuego solar. Habrá que verlo.
Thank you so much for that, Karla. The first question that I wanted to ask is actually for both of you. We're curious, how exactly did your collaboration come about?
Allison?
Allison, you're on mute still.
Okay, yes, I know I can be soft-spoken, but that was a bit much. Well, I've been traveling to the Yucatán and to the south of Mexico for many years. I used to live in Mexico. So before I knew Karla, I met her work. I had read one year hundreds of works of authors from the south of Mexico, and I happened to read Karla's book of short stories, Arquitectura de lo Invisible, Architecture of the Invisible. And based on that, we contacted each other, and the collaboration went from there. At this point, I've translated poems, a short story, and then Mayo from Karla's work. Karla is an extremely versatile writer. She's a poet, she's a playwright. Karla es una escritora muy versátil, es poeta, es dramaturga y novelista, and her work is very unique in a lot of different ways. I believe Emily Dickinson was attributed with saying that she knew she had written a poem when the hair on the back of her neck stood up, and that she wanted to write work that breathed. Se dicen que Emily Dickinson sabía que había escrito una poema cuando le daba escalofríos o cuando sus palabras respiraban. And I felt that Karla's work breathed when I read it.
Thank you very much, Allison.
No, it's really, yes, I'm very enthusiastic about your work.
We had the same reaction here at SAND when we read it as well. This quote from Emily Dickinson is so great. I think she talks about her head being taken off as well, the top of her head being taken off. And
I'd like to keep mine, but that's yeah, an interesting idea.
But yes, we felt the same.
Thank you.
So, Allison, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what the collaboration process was like. We're not translators ourselves, but we love the work of translators. And we were wondering what it's like. Is that a lonely process, or is that a process where you're really actively involved? You and Karla are really actively involved.
Well, I would say we were very actively involved in the translation process. I really feel that translation is a collaboration. So I really appreciate all of Karla's help about specific terms, especially there are some regionally specific words and terminology in the translation. So I was in touch with Karla very regularly through the process. As far as the life of a translator, yeah, besides the fact that everyone wears masks to the grocery store, my life hasn't significantly changed in the last few weeks.
Great. So we really wanted to talk about also one of, or many of the reasons we loved this piece. It's experimental, it's poetry as prose, it chooses a narrative voice that is one we don't usually hear. An older woman, first of all, an older woman living alone, and an older woman who is losing her memory, and she knows it. And Karla, we were really interested in finding out, how did that narrative voice come about? What attracted you to this narrator and this style of writing?
Yeah, well, at first I wanted to create a character that was, yes, this woman who is gradually losing her memory, but also I wanted to give that feeling of despair, of constant struggling with her own past and in her present, and how she's trying so hard to go back to certain moments in her life that were important for her and for her family that now it's gone, and especially those moments in the relationship with her son. So I wanted to give the feeling of this woman who is lonely, sad, but also fragmented in the inside. So I thought that the way she had to speak and the way that she thinks had to be also broken. So when I was trying to configure her voice, I just thought that the way of making that natural and to give that feeling of I don't know, of being broken had to be something that the reader also can identify in the text when reading. This is so like falling out of place, and because that's the way the character is feeling in that moment when she's trying to remember and she's trying to speak and she's trying to recover all those moments that were so important for her.
Yeah, we found it really beautiful how the form of the piece mirrors the inner life of the narrator. This is a really beautiful marriage of literary form and character.
Yeah, there are so many elements of the narrative voice and really the construction of the writing in general that are so delicate and subtle, because as Ashley mentioned, there is so much poetry and prose together here. And so I was really curious to ask Allison what it was like to translate that. And it's so much less straightforward than many novels. So how was your approach? Did you find that challenging in some way? How did you find a voice that would capture the poetic voice that Karla has?
Thank you. Yes, really, there is a lot of poetry in this piece. And that was one of the aspects of it that really attracted me to it. It was like translating poetry, but without the rhymes, and fortunately, but there is meter in this, there's music, there's lyricism. So really, you know, just the sounds of the language, I feel that Karla really does a wonderful job of capturing the just the music and the magic of the way people talk in everyday life. There's a level of realism to the piece, and it also really is the way our thoughts go. So even though it may seem like an alternative narration, there really is a authentic voice here. ¿Cómo fue la experiencia de traducir la voz de esta narradora? Fue como traducir la poesía, más o menos. Es una obra muy lírica y con mucha música, y creo que Karla es una poeta y tiene un oído para la sonoridad de diálogo que se usen en la vida cotidiana. So it was just really a pleasure to get into this language. Thank you.
Oh, that's lovely to hear. And our next question is kind of about something strange that happened while we made this issue of Sand. We chose to publish this piece back in January, before Europe and North America were under quarantine, before the coronavirus, this pandemic had affected the world. And what happened when I was rereading this piece in March under quarantine was I found myself connecting with the narrator because I myself was at home. I don't have a cat, Tiresias, to keep me company. And I was also losing track of days. I was losing track of the time. I was forgetting things. And I felt like the way that this narrator expresses herself had become a way that many people I knew, not just me, were expressing themselves. And I wanted to ask that question to both Karla and Allison. How do you read this story differently? Do you read your own work, Karla, differently now in this time of global pandemic? Or Allison, as the translator, do you read it differently as well?
Yeah, well, it's funny because, well, now here in Merida, like everywhere else, it's May, but it's the hottest season of the year, and it's weird because you don't really want to go outside because it's unbearable. I mean, the heat, you can walk a couple of blocks because the sun is just horrible. But right now we can't do that, so it's okay. And the novel, wanted to give that feeling of wanting to go outside but not really wanting, and also this feeling of being isolated. And well, right now in the case of the character, she's not in a quarantine, but now that I reread the novel, I felt that losing track of time, and at some point losing memory, losing your mind, because it's kind of maddening to be like this for, well, we have been like that for 2.5 months, I mean, here. And yeah, that feeling of being like trapped, but you're not really trapped because you're at home, and how your home gets weirder every day, because it's like when you see yourself in the mirror, like for a very long time, you just stop recognizing your own face. It's kind of like that, what happens in the novel, and what kinds of feel right now that it's happening, because you're in the same place every day and you're looking at the same exact things, but everything is becoming a little weirder. So yeah, I think it gives the same impression. And for the character, for this woman, that isolation also has to do with she's not only like feeling kind of trapped in her own house, but also in her own mind. So it's kind of a reflection of the physical situation of this woman, but also the situation in her own mind, that she's losing control of what's going in there. So that's also part of this claustrophobic feeling, that you just can't go outside right now, but you can just go out of your mind. I mean, yeah, no, that makes sense.
Of course, of course. I think that makes sense to a lot of people watching right now.
Okay.
Allison, would you like to add anything?
Sure. You know, I think one reason I was drawn to this work was its sense of isolation and alienation. In our world, a lot of these situations, especially with older adults, were already existing, and certainly situations with the environment. The sun really can kill you in some parts of the world, and that's part of the piece as well. So I really feel throughout countries in North America that older adults are experiencing already a lot of isolation. Families separate for a number of different reasons. So, and there are a lot of inhospitable places in the world because of the heat. So I feel like a lot of the themes, you know, a lot of the situations already existed. Una razón por la cual me atrajo esta obra fue por sus temas de aislamiento y de la narradora, y pero situaciones como esta ya existían en el mundo moderno. So yeah, it's really with technology, with social isolation, a lot of people end up there already.
Definitely. So, Melissa, did you want to ask about publishing then?
Sure. Thank you both so much. And it's been really interesting for us as publishers to reread these pieces because the first half of our selection process was before the pandemic, and then we accepted right before the pandemic really started. And as we're editing and proofreading the drafts of the file that will be printed, we found that our relationship with almost every piece had changed. So it was really interesting to hear you both talk about that. A lot of the people who are listening right now are also writers or translators. And I think that it would be great to ask you if both of you, if there's any advice that you have for emerging writers and translators who are looking to publish their work, and especially if that work is less traditional and more experimental.
Well, I think that one of the most important things to try to do, if this is the case, try to connect with projects, websites, and all different kinds of groups that are in this, that are related to this kind of creation, of this kind of creative writing. And because I think that the most important thing for you to get other people to know your work is to build relationships with other people in your local community, in your city, in your country, and of course in any other place where you can establish those relationships, because at the end I think that's the most important thing, to connect and to make a richer experience of this kind of creative writing that is not usually published and difundida. I don't remember the word. Distributed, I think.
And I would add to that, just read a lot. The first step to getting published is to read. Recomiendo que leen más de la cuenta para traductores o traductoras que leen en ambos idiomas, that you read in both languages. I would have had more advice about this, maybe more suggestions about this back in March. A lot of small presses, a lot of libraries, a lot of readers aren't buying books right now. So la situación ha cambiado y hubiera tenido más consejos tal vez a principios de marzo. But I really advise you to read a lot. In order to translate well, you have to really love words, you have to love reading, and you have to know your audience and your market. SAND is a wonderful international journal, and I've been following you and reading you for several years before I began submitting a piece like Mayo, but you really have to know what who your audience is and what different magazines and journals are publishing. If not, you can end up wasting a lot of time. But if you do your research as a translator, as a literary translator, then it's, it can be, it's really like collaborating. Es una colaboración y es un arte. It's a collaboration and an art to find the right placement for the right piece. So just read good work and translate the best work you can and do an excellent translation. So that's my advice.
You know what? We actually had a couple more questions, but I just love that answer so much. It's just so positive about reading, about the beauty of reading and loving words. That's why we're all here. Why we're here in 3 different countries, in 3 different time zones. This is the reason why people are watching you, why they tuned in to talk to you tonight, because we all love words. So this is a time when I think they're just so important. Words are just so important. This story is important right now. And I think we're running a little bit out of time, aren't we, Melissa? Yeah? So maybe then we'll come to a conclusion, unless you had any quick questions for us. Okay, great. Then thank you both so much for being here in your different time zones. I hope that you both stay healthy and safe, and that all of you out there stay healthy and safe as well. I also hope that you'll pick up a copy of SAN number 21 to read the first chapter of Mayo in English, or if you would like to read it in Spanish, you can actually find it from the Ayuntamiento de Aguascalientes, Mexico. So thank you both for being here. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll say goodbye.
Yes,
Bye.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.